Hello everyone and welcome back to Quickflicks. And today we'll be talking about the 1995 film directed by Paul Anderson, who would later go on to do Alien vs. Predator and also the Resident Evil franchise with Mia Jovovich, if I pronounce that correctly, and is an adaptation of the NetherRealm Studios and Midway arcade cabinet of the same name. Mortal Kombat has been a video game franchise that has been a franchise that has been popular in modern culture, not just because it's fun, violent, and gory, but because of the controversy surrounding it. Jack Thompson famously wanted to, get rid of these video games, and famously, along with the arcade cabinets, there were also ports of these games for the consoles of the time. And when you got the Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat, it would have a bloodless mode. In fact, you wouldn't even be able to find the blood that made the game so famous. And at the time, in 1995, Mortal Kombat was really, really popular. And so Paul Anderson was tapped by New Line Cinema to create the 1995 film that we are going to be discussing today. And, oh boy, I am not necessarily a fan of this movie. I get why people love this movie. It's not a movie that is purely great for basically anything, but it has qualities in it that make it a movie that's so bad that's so good. And we're going to start off with something that starts the movie, the Mortal Kombat theme. The Mortal Kombat theme in this movie was actually part of the earlier marketing campaign of the arcade cabinet. And I mean, how could you not go wrong with a theme song like this? I mean, it's just electro funk. It just gets you really wanting to go into a fight, and it works to start off the movie. And then we get this whole movie about Liu Kang, who is trying to go after Shang Tsung for, killing his brother, I think.
Your brother's soul is mine.
And then it switches over to Sonya, who is trying to, find Kano. And then you get Johnny Cage, who's trying to up his image as a Hollywood film guy. The movie in the first act kind of introduces a lot of different characters for, the purposes of getting to know who the central protagonists are in this film and who the antagonist is. But it's just so haphazardly done that you don't necessarily get a sense of who these characters really are other than what they appear to be. I mean, even with Liu Kang in the beginning of the movie, all you really know is that his brother died and he wants revenge. Or not really revenge, but, justice. And the only other thing is that he's it kind of goes through and kind of does a shorthand of the mythology around these characters from the video games. And, it's fine. It works fine for a setup, but it just doesn't necessarily hook you from the initial start of the film. That's just my opinion. The film has this way of doing comedy that is actually kind of pleasant to me. There's a scene early on in the film where Johnny Cage mistakes Liu Kang for a dock worker or a person who works on the boat, right? That's supposed to take him to the Mortal Kombat island. And he mistakes him for being a person that takes the luggage on the boat. And Liu Kang just does this.
You want me to carry your luggage?
Yeah, I pay money, you carry the bags. Or is that too complicated?
No. I got it.
Good.
I mean, this scene alone is the reason why I watched this movie. There are parts of this movie that have genuine humor that is just hilarious. It's hilarious to watch because it's just dumb. It's not really dumb, but it's just like, oh yeah, this would be something that he would do. It's funny. But the rest of the movie, my main issue with this movie is that it's a little overlong. And for as much stuff that happens, when they get to the island, it starts off pretty promising. Like, you have Shang Tsung and whatnot, and Sub-Zero, who, start off this whole thing. And it's like, okay, cool. You get to show off the powers. You get to show off, what's at stake for these characters if they fail. But at the same time, from then on, it just gets progressively worse. And by worse, I mean, let's also talk about Raiden. Raiden in this film is portrayed by a Highland actor. I don't know his name. I'll put it up on the screen. Raiden in this film is not good, but he adds to the factor that it's so bad it's so good. Because he's so obviously miscast. Like, aside from the fact that he's white, he is not embodying of the character of, Raiden. He is not embodying him at all. In the games, he is a god. He's a guy that is supposed to be feared. He's a defender of Earthrealm. And in this movie, they have him cracking jokes.
The fate of billions will depend upon you. Sorry.
And it's both funny and kind of dumb at the same time. Like, if you want Raiden to be a god in this movie, there's like literally nothing. There's only a few times where he actually uses his lightning powers, and most of the time it's to run away. There's like no other point in this movie that he actually uses electricity on people, as far as I remember. It's not a movie that is going to do Raiden justice. But what makes it so funny is that when you get things like this...
I don't think so.
It's instantly memeable. Like, this movie, if you were to condense it down to a couple of scenes, there's so many scenes you can make memes out of. And that's how it kind of works. My other big issue with Mortal Kombat is that the second act of this movie is nothing but an elongated sequence of fight sequences. There's like even a fight sequence between Johnny Cage and Scorpion in this movie that is just there because, oh look, this one fight is over, but like there's nothing really to do, so we're just gonna film this because, we need another fight in this movie. Don't get me wrong, I like the fight scene between Scorpion and Johnny Cage, but it also feels like it just comes out of nowhere. And speaking of Scorpion, let's also talk about Scorpion and Sub-Zero, because in the game, they are supposed to be mortal enemies. They are supposed to be badass warriors that aren't controlled by other people. And in this movie, they are controlled by Shang Tsung of all people, and they are demoted from being protagonist characters to being sidekicks. Sub-Zero doesn't really get a lot of time in this movie. Scorpion gets a little bit more time, but when he's on screen, the most stupidest adaptation thing happens. Like, how he has that hook shot where he can go, "Get over here"? Apparently, in this version, it comes out of his hand. Like it's as if like they knew that in the future Sam Raimi would do like the organic web thing for Spider-Man instead of the whole like it's supposed to be part of his equipment sort of thing. And they're like, you know what? Let's go back in time and then give him a living hook shot that bleeds when it hits a tree. And it's dumb. It's the dumbest decision, but that's kind of why you remember it. It's dumb for all the right reasons in this case. And the film, after that point of the initial, like dinner scene after they first get to the island, it's nothing but fights. And some of them are really good. There's a fight between Reptile, or after Reptile becomes a ninja from the actual game. Like, that scene in of itself has a really fun choreographed fight scene. If it's one thing that is definitely memorable about the film, is that there are times in this film that have perfect choreography. Even the fight with Shang Tsung at the end is actually kind of cool. But the thing that's missing from these combat sequences is obviously the fatalities. Part of the humor, or part of the juvenile humor and the identity of what made Mortal Kombat in the first place, how it became so controversial in the first place, is all thanks to the fact of its fatalities. There is none in this movie. And without it, I feel like Mortal Kombat 95 loses a lot of its identity. If it wasn't for the fact that it has its main characters, if it wasn't for the fact that it has Goro, which is an amazing puppet animatronic hybrid thing that is just amazing. I am happy they did the whole practical effect route with this one. Even with all of that, even with all the signifiers, the logos, and all this other stuff, what makes Mortal Kombat was its violence. The whole point of the game is that it's just a fun, silly game, and the fatalities in the game are meant to highlight how absurd it all is. You're supposed to have fun in that aspect, and the film loses all of it. And no wonder why the AVP movie didn't work out either, because that movie too did not have the violence nor the suspense that the previous franchise entries of those movie properties, Alien and Predator, had in the past. And let's also talk about the CG in this movie. There are points when the CG just don't work. There's a part in the beginning where Shang Tsung transforms into a skull that just looks really bad. And also Reptile. Reptile looks so bad. Oh boy. Reptile looks really bad in this movie. But that's what you get when you have a 1995 movie. CG effects in the 90s weren't necessarily the best, and it's case in points like this. The budget definitely wasn't up to snuff when they were trying to make Reptile into what he is in this movie. There's just not enough there. And the film ends with, Shang Tsung dying, and all the spirits that he has absorbed throughout the entire game is released, and all this other stuff. And then we get the teaser for the sequel, which I will never cover, and that is Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And the problem with this is that it should be a big reveal. The problem is, it's not. Because throughout the entire movie, they allude to this great emperor, and we all know who that is. It's Shao Kahn. It's Shao Kahn. And this movie pretends like it's some big reveal that's going to be explained in the sequel, and it ends up being. But if you didn't really care about who this person is, why would you want to continue watching the franchise from here on out? It just makes no sense. And so after the release of Mortal Kombat, there was Mortal Kombat Annihilation, of course. There was a couple weird TV shows, and then there was an animated movie that was for Scorpion's origin story, which I would say is the best thing to come out of the new Mortal Kombat film media as a whole. And so with Mortal Kombat 2021 coming out next week from the time that I recorded this video, it's going to be interesting to see how the new generation of filmmakers is going to approach Mortal Kombat. And from what I've heard, it's going to be a bloody good time. And I'm excited for it. And so I'm going to give Mortal Kombat 1995 a C-. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of Mortal Kombat 1995, and I'll see you guys in Mortal Kombat next week. Peace.